This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. First, the headlines. From Malawi, missing VP Chilima, others pronounced dead, aircraft found. United States, Baltimore's main shipping channel reopened. China, regional security concerns to overshadow lucrative ties. Switzerland, Swiss lower house parliament votes to reject ruling global warming. Australia, Peter Malinauskas announces plan to ban political donations. Malawi's Vice President, Saulus Klaus Chilima, and 9 others, including former First Lady Chanel Zimbiri, were killed when the military plane they were traveling in crashed, President Lazarus Chakwera said on Tuesday. The aircraft carrying Chilima, who was seen as a potential candidate in the next year's presidential election, went missing on Monday. I am deeply saddened to inform you. I'm deeply saddened. I am sorry to inform you all that it had turned out to be a terrible tragedy. The search and rescue team has found the aircraft near a hill. They have found it completely destroyed with no survivors, Chakwera said in an address to the nation. The plane left the capital, Lilongwe, at 9:17 a.m. on Monday, but was unable to land at Mzunzu Airport as scheduled at 10:02 a.m. due to poor visibility. It was ordered to return to Lilongwe, but went off the radar and aviation authorities could not make contact with it. Chakwera said all passengers on board were killed on impact and the military was bringing their remains back to the capital. Despite the track record of the aircraft and the experience of the crew, something terrible went wrong with the aircraft on its flight back to Lilongwe, sending it crashing down and leaving us all devastated, he said. Images shared online showed security and rescue personnel on the crash site on a hillside with debris scattered around the tail of the Dornier 228-202K military transport plane, its tail number MAF TO3 still visible. The International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor is urgently investigating allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Darfur city of Al-Fashir, which has become a new front between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. In a video statement released on Tuesday, prosecutor Karim Khan said the ICC has an active investigation into possible atrocity crimes being committed at present in Darfur. I am extremely concerned about allegations of widespread international crimes being committed in Al-Fashir and its surrounding areas as we speak, Khan said, adding that his office was investigating those allegations with urgency. His investigators had seen credible allegations of what looks like ethnically motivated attacks against the civilian population, widespread use of rape and attacks against hospitals, he added. Khan called for anyone with possible evidence, video or audio material to submit it to his office. Al-Fashir in the Darfur region of northwestern Sudan is home to more than 1.8 million residents and displaced people, and is the latest front in a war between the Sudanese army and the RSF, which began in April 2023. The ICC can prosecute war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and in some cases the crime of aggression if committed on the territory of one of the court's 124 member states or by nationals of ICC members. It can also have jurisdiction through a referral by the United Nations Security Council, as happened with Darfur in 2005. In January this year, the ICC prosecutor told the UN Security Council he believed war crimes were being committed in Darfur by government troops and the RSF in El Geneina. Haiti's administration picked new ministers on Tuesday, rounding out the new prime minister's cabinet in a stark departure from the previous government as the country battles a deep humanitarian crisis fueled by armed gangs. The cabinet, announced nearly 2 weeks after Prime Minister Gary Conille himself was named to his post, trims the number of ministers while replacing all who served in former Prime Minister Ariel Henry's cabinet. Many of the new picks were drawn from outside Haiti's political class altogether. Haiti's prolonged social and political crisis has deepened since the presidential assassination in 2021 threw the Caribbean nation into upheaval. Gangs have expanded their control over the country while displacing thousands of civilians. In the new cabinet, the Prime Minister will also serve as Interior Minister, controlling much of Haiti's security forces as well as intelligence gathering. Conille returned as Prime Minister after a brief stint in the role more than a decade ago. He was most recently a top official with the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF. The Justice Ministry will be headed by Carlos Hercule, a lawyer who formerly headed the Port-au-Prince Bar Association, along with serving as a member of an electoral council set to pave the way for Haiti's next elections. He will oversee a paralyzed judicial system and the country's embattled police who have been fighting with the powerful gangs. Princeton-educated Kathleen Floresol, who has advised multilateral lenders, takes over the finance ministry from Michael Patrick Boisvet, who also served as interim prime minister this year. The Director General of Brazil's Federal Police said on Tuesday that 3 ongoing probes into far-right former President Jair Bolsonaro are expected to conclude by next month, the final step before deciding whether to formally accuse him of crimes. Bolsonaro, who governed from 2019 to 2022, has faced mounting legal jeopardy since he left office after narrowly losing the 2022 presidential election to leftist President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The 3 ongoing police probes focus on allegations that he and his associate pawned jewelry given to his administration by the Saudi government, tampered with his vaccination records, and plotted a coup d'etat to overturn the 2022 election results. Our expectation is that in June we will conclude the first 2 investigations on jewelry and vaccines, and in July we will finalize the coup investigation, Federal Police Director General Andre Rodriguez told reporters. Bolsonaro has repeatedly denied breaking any laws and calls allegations against him a witch hunt by his political opponents. He has been barred from public office until 2030 by Brazil's Federal Electoral Court for his conduct during the 2022 election, when he summoned ambassadors to vent unfounded claims of vulnerabilities in Brazil's electronic voting system. In the case investigating his alleged embezzlement of Saudi jewels, which were pawned in the United States, Rodriguez said police had discovered with FBI assistance a new jewel potentially linked to the case. Mexico's President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum spoke on Tuesday with U.S. officials about her strategies for security, migration, and trade just over a week after the leftist leader won a landslide election victory. Speaking at a press conference, Sheinbaum said her security strategy will focus on addressing the root cause of crime as well as combating impunity. This week's reopening of Baltimore's main shipping channel, less than 3 months after the Key Bridge collapse, was due to expertise gained from a COVID-era task force, a highway overpass collapse, and the 2021 infrastructure law, and government officials said. The deadly March 26 collision of the cargo ship Dali into the Francis Scott Key Bridge had paralyzed a major transportation artery for the U.S. Northeast. Within hours, President Joe Biden directed aides to get the channel reopened, the bridge rebuilt, and vowed the federal government would cover the full cost. His administration has previously faced criticisms for its initial response to a 2023 derailment of a train in Ohio. Federal officials said on Monday that full access to the channel had been restored after the removal of 50,000 tons of debris. On Wednesday, Maryland Governor Wes Moore and other officials are holding a press event to mark its reopening. Within hours, President Joe Biden directed aides to get the channel reopened, the bridge rebuilt, and vowed the federal government would cover the full cost. His administration has previously faced criticisms for its initial response to the 2023 derailment of a train in Ohio. Federal officials said on Monday that full access to the channel had been restored after the removal of 50,000 tons of debris. After the collapse, the Coast Guard quickly established a unified command to coordinate search, recovery, and response efforts. It oversaw more than 1,500 individual responders that involved 56 federal, state, and local agencies, along with 500 specialists operating a fleet of boats to remove steel and concrete debris and address shipping impacts. I think that one of the most important things we did was establishing the unified command, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Natalie Cullinan said. Three groups representing older Americans on Wednesday endorsed Democrat Joe Biden for a second term as president as the Biden campaign works to build on existing support among seniors and help offset weaker backing among Black and Latino voters. The National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, which defied a 38-year tradition of avoiding endorsement to back Biden in 2020, Social Security Works, PAC, and the Bipartisan National United Committee to Protect Pensions all said they would back Biden, previously reported, follow the January endorsement of Biden by the 4.4 million member Alliance for Retired Americans. The committee said Biden had worked to protect seniors' earned benefits. The campaign on Tuesday launched Seniors for Biden-Harris, a grassroots program to energize voters 65 and up with more than a dozen events from bingo nights to pickleball tournaments to appearances by senior administration officials. Older Americans could play a key role in the election given that they vote at higher levels than any other group and account for nearly 10 million voters in key election battleground states including Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Seniors generally vote majority Republican, but their growing support for Biden, 81, the oldest person to serve as president, could be good news for the Democrats, whose approval rating fell to its lowest level in almost 2 years in May. Americans 65 and older numbered nearly 56 million in the 2020 census, or just under 17% of the U.S. population. Trump won voters of that age by 7 percentage points in 2016, but Biden narrowed the gap to 5 points in 2020 and now has a narrow lead, according to an April NBC News polls. Republican Sam Brown captured his party's U.S. Senate nomination in Nevada on Tuesday, setting up a November showdown against Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen that could impact Republican hopes of winning Senate control. Brown, a former U.S. Army captain who was badly wounded in a roadside bombing in Afghanistan in 2008, emerged a victor from a crowded field, claiming 57.9% of the vote with 72% of the ballots cast, according to the Associated Press. His counter had 15.6% of the vote. In the Democratic primary, Rosen won renomination against two challengers who, by garnering 92.3% of the vote with 73% of ballots counted. Voters also chose nominees on Tuesday in primary elections in South Carolina, Maine, and North Dakota, while a Republican captured a special House election in Ohio. Thank you, Nevada. Next stop, November 5th, Brown said in a post on the social media platform X. He had been backed by Trump, the Republican presidential candidate, and others in the party, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Nevada is a highly competitive state that will play an important role in determining control of the Senate and whether Democratic President Joe Biden or his challenger Trump wins the White House. Democrats hold a 51 to 49 majority in the Senate, but one-third of the chamber is up for grabs in November. Republicans have an easier path to recapturing the majority as they are up for re-election in states not seen as competitive. By contrast, Democrats face tough races in Arizona, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Wisconsin. South Korea's main opposition leader was indicted on Wednesday on bribery charges in an alleged scheme to use an underwear maker to transfer funds to North Korea and facilitate a visit to Pyongyang when he was a provincial governor, news reports said. Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung, deputy when he was in Gyeonggi province governor, had already been found guilty of bribery and transferring illegal funds in a conspiracy involving Sangbangwoo Group to send $8 million to North Korea. Sangbangwoo is a business group that began as an underwear maker and later expanded to other businesses. Calls to the Public Affairs Office at the Suwon District Prosecutor's Office went unanswered. Lee has denied any involvement or knowledge of the scheme, which dates to 2019 and 2020 and was aimed at promoting a commercial project with North Korea and a visit by Lee to Pyongyang, which would have burnished his status as a rising political figure. "I am not that foolish," Lee said last year, calling the charges against him fiction as the court denied a warrant for his arrest. After the indictment on Wednesday, he said the prosecutor's creativity is getting worse. Lee was the Democratic Party's candidate for president in 2022, and he narrowly lost to Yoon Suk-yeol, a career prosecutor. Lee is considered a major contender for the next presidential election in 2027. Hong Kong Security Bureau said on Wednesday it would use powers in a new national security law against 6 self-exile activists residing in Britain, including cancelling their passports after they fled the China-ruled city. The 6 are Nathan Law, Christopher Mung Siu-tat, Fin Lau, Simon Cheng, Johnny Fok Kachi, and Tony Choi Ming-da. City authorities put them on a wanted list last year. These lawless wanted criminals are hiding in the United Kingdom and continue to blatantly engage in activities that endanger national security, the Bureau said in a statement. They continue to collude with external forces to protect their evil deeds. "We therefore have taken much measures to give them a strong blow," it added, noting that these moves involved exercising powers in a new set of national security laws known as Article 23, which were enacted in March. Hong Kong authorities have outlawed more than a dozen overseas activists based in the United States, Britain, and other countries. A bounty of HK $1 million for information for these activists was also offered. The new measures for the 6 in Britain prohibits providing them with funds and cancels their business dealings in Hong Kong, sabotage and sedition. Security Chief Chris Tang called the measures against the activists a necessary action at a news conference on Wednesday. Tang said all 6 have harbored in Britain and continue to collude with external forces to engage in activities that endanger the national security of Hong Kong and China. Regional security concerns will overshadow lucrative trade ties when China's premier competition for Australia's rare earths needed for electric vehicles and defense from Western security allies. New Zealand was the first Western nation to strike a free trade agreement with China in 2008, and China remains its largest export market for milk and agriculture products, with two-way trade of nearly 38 billion New Zealand dollar. New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon said Lee's visit was an opportunity for businesses to strike deals, and there was a massive areas of course. Kim traveled to Russia's Far East last September with satellite. Kim also lauded Russia for achieving results on its efforts to build a strong country despite by suppressing and crushing all the challenges and sanctions on companies, while investors awaited key inflation readings and the Federal Reserve's rate decision. The NSE Nifty 50 settlement and expectations of new from the government. Devon Choksi, managing director, and India needs to water farms and refill reservoirs and aquifers. In the absence of irrigation, nearly half of the farmland in the world's second biggest producer of rice, wheat, and sugar depends on the annual rains that usually run from June to September. The maximum temperature in India's northern states ranges between 42 degrees Celsius and 46 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit which is nearly 3 degrees Celsius to 5 degrees Celsius above the normal, the IMD data showed. India's northern and eastern states such as Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Punjab, Haryana, Uttarakhand and Odisha are likely to experience days of heat wave in the next 2 weeks, another weather official said. Weather models are not indicating any early response. Month, the capital, New Delhi, recorded its highest ever temperature at 49.9 degrees Celsius in some places, while grappling with water shortage. In heat hovering as high as 44 degrees Celsius, rains in central, northern and some western states are likely to fall below normal in the next 2 weeks, the second official said. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We return after this break.
Jack us up and down like this now.
I hope nobody carry belle.
Why you ask oh?
Because this road where they see so it no guarantee safe delivery oh.
We just dey vote for government, but we not get good governance.
At all.
Roads so e no dey, light o usa, infrastructure nko e come turn to be forbidden fruit for the city.
Corruption, well everything. Hello?
Hello, madam. Good
I've been expecting your call.
Madam, remove this your phone from loudspeaker.
No vex, now my phone be like that. Hello?
Are you there?
I hear, I'm hearing you.
Yes. We saw a copy of your invoice for computers, printers, and laptops.
Yes. Are you working on them now?
Ma, the prices you quoted are way too high now.
Madam, sorry oh. Please don't call.
We found the laptop you said is 1.8 million naira for 600,000 naira.
Hello?
Now my body network there.
I can't hear you. Network is bad.
Madam, we can hear you. Continue.
Hello, I can't hear you. We call you back.
That behavior not good now.
Madam, now this kind behavior they kill our country. You suppose do things differently. Make Nigeria for better.
Corruption not in my country. This message is brought to you by the Akinfade Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation,
and with broadcast support from Atlantic Television Network.
corruption not in my country.
I don't get a lot. Boy, they won't booga me small. They say, man, give them bribe. I say, nothing. Okay, now, we'll go block later. You remember that contract where we do that time now? They don't pay.
But first, you see the house rent with the old since. We go first call caretaker, take the money, slap am.
Beg, see, you know, say I get annual levy why they pay for club. Where me and boys they shark beer in our house, I supposed pay that one. You remember say me I tell you I go buy you motor. I go buy now.
Okay, they pay you money now. Why we don't they beg caretaker? Why would they beg landlord, old man, and they agree give us time. Money can't come now. You won't divert am. You said na corruption. Corruption, not in my house and not in my country.
Sure.
Corruption not in my country. This message is brought to you by the Akinfade Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation,
And with broadcast support from Atlantic Television Network.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
Welcome back. This is the International News on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. A UN inquiry found on Wednesday that both Israel and Hamas had committed war crimes in the early stages of the war in Gaza, and that Israel's actions also constituted crimes against humanity because of the immense civilian losses. The findings were from two parallel reports by the UN Commission of Inquiry, one focusing on the October 7 attack and the other on Israel's response. Israel, which did not cooperate with the Commission, dismissed the findings as the result of anti-Israeli bias. Hamas did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The war began on October 7 when militants led by Hamas, the Islamist group ruling Gaza, killed 1,200 Israelis and took more than 250 hostage, according to Israeli tallies. Israel's military retaliation has caused the deaths of more than 37,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza's health ministry. This placed most of Gaza's population of 2.3 million caused widespread hunger and devastated housing and infrastructure. Negotiators from the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar have been trying for months to mediate a ceasefire and free the hostages, more than 100 of whom are believed to remain captive in Gaza. Izzat al-Rishq, a member of Hamas's political bureau, said its formal response to a U.S. ceasefire proposal outlined by U.S. President Joe Biden on May 31st was responsible, serious and positive, and opens up a wide path for an accord. But Israeli officials said on Tuesday, on condition of anonymity, that Israel had received the answers via the mediators and that Hamas changed all the main and most meaningful parameters and rejected the proposal for a hostage release. The proposal outlined by Biden envisages a ceasefire and phased release of Israeli hostages in Gaza in exchange for Palestinians jailed in Israel, ultimately leading to a permanent end to the war. Lebanon's Hezbollah fired big barrages of rockets at Israel on Wednesday in retaliation for an Israeli strike which killed a senior Hamas Hezbollah field commander, escalating the conflict across the eruption of the Gaza war in October, in steadily intensifying hostilities that have fueled bigger confrontation between the heavily armed adversaries. Israeli strike in South Lebanon village of Jeriah late on Tuesday killed 3 Hezbollah fighters alongside the senior field commander identified by Hezbollah as Taleb Abdullah, also known as Abu Taleb, 3 security sources said. He was the most senior Hezbollah commander killed during 8 months of hostilities, one of the sources said. The sources said he was Hezbollah's commander for the central region of the southern border strip. His funeral is due to be held later on Wednesday. There was no immediate comment from the Israeli military. A security source in Lebanon said Hezbollah had fired more than 100 rockets in response, saying it was one of the group's biggest rocket barrages since the hostilities began in October. Hezbollah declared at least 5 attacks in response to what it called an assassination by Israel in Jeriah, including one in which Hezbollah fighters fired guided missiles at an Israeli military factory. The group also said it had attacked Israeli military headquarters in Ain Zitim and Amiad and an Israeli military air surveillance station in Meron, in each case firing dozens of Katyusha rockets, according to its statements. Sirens sounded in northern Israel. Israeli jets hit a number of launch sites in southern Lebanon on Wednesday after projectiles were fired towards northern Israel, the military said. Only a quarter of Britons believe the country should be outside the European Union, according to a report published on Wednesday, the lowest proportion since the 2016 vote to leave the bloc. Britain will hold a national election on July 4th, its first since the country formally left the EU in 2020. Despite Europe having long been a divisive topic in British politics, the issue of Brexit has barely featured so far in the election campaign. The British Social Attitude Survey carried out by the National Centre for Social Research found 24% said Britain should be outside the EU compared to 36% in 2019 and 41% in 2016. It also found the impact of Brexit on issues such as the economy and immigration was regarded more negatively now than in 2019 when the last election was held. The change was particularly marked among those who voted Leave in 2016. Around 40% of Leave voters feel that the economy is worse off as a result of Brexit compared to 18% who felt that it would be the case in 2019. Nearly two-thirds now believe immigration is higher as a result of leaving the EU compared with just 5% who previously expected that would be the case. In short, it appears that for many of those who voted to leave the EU, Brexit has not turned out as they anticipated. The report, co-authored by polling expert John Curtis, said the survey of 5,578 people carried out between September 12th and October 31st last year also found public trust and confidence in government had fallen to record lows, with 45% almost never trusting British government to put the needs of the nation above their interests of their own political party. Greece shut the ancient Acropolis tourist site, suspended schools, and stationed medics across Athens on Wednesday as it faced the first heat wave of the summer. Temperatures were expected to hit 43 degrees Celsius on Wednesday and Thursday in parts of the Mediterranean country, driven by southerly winds bringing hot air and dust from North Africa. The Acropolis Hill, home to one of the world's most famous archaeological sites that includes the Parthenon Temple, was closed from noon to 5 p.m., and Red Cross staff source of water to tourists. Many primary schools and nurseries across the country were shut for 2 days. Greece is one of the most climate-impacted countries in Europe. Last year, rising temperatures, few deadly wildfires, and erratic rains caused some of the worst flooding on record, both of which damaged crops and livelihoods. Last winter was the hottest on record, and rainfall was low, creating the conditions for more fires, scientists say. Similar conditions were seen last year across much of southern Europe, including Portugal, France, Spain, and Italy, where fires caused dozens of deaths. In Greece, fires began earlier than expected this year, including one in March. Firefighters and police were patrolling forests from air and land on Wednesday, ahead of what is expected to be a windy end to the week, raising the risk of fires spreading. After last year's destructive wildfires, including on the island of Rhodes, which prompted the biggest evacuation in peacetime, Greece has scaled up its preparations by hiring more staff and stepping up training. The lower house of the Swiss parliament voted on Wednesday to reject a ruling ordering Switzerland to do more to combat global warming in a move that could encourage others to resist the influence of international courts. In April, the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg issued an unprecedented judgment that said Bern had violated the human rights of a group of older Swiss women, the Klimena Senioren, by failing to tackle climate change. But Bern's lower house on Wednesday followed in the steps of the upper house and passed a non-binding motion with 111 votes in favor of 72 against, blasting the court's judicial activism. It argued there was no reason to take further action because Switzerland was already doing enough. During the debate, lawmakers denounced the court's interference with Swiss democracy, and one called the Strasbourg ruling erroneous, as several older women who brought the case to Strasbourg looked on. One of the MPs from the right-wing Swiss People's Party, SVP's People's Party, which is the biggest party in parliament, appeared to mock the women, criticizing them for bringing a case because they're a bit too hot in the summer. He was referring to the women's argument that the government's inadequate efforts to combat climate change put them at risk of dying during heat waves. "It is really disgraceful what just happened," Stephanie Brander, 68, told Reuters after the vote, her voice shaking with anger. "It is an insult and a lack of respect of our rights, which were confirmed by an international court." French President Emmanuel Macron on Wednesday urged rival parties on both sides of the political center to join him in forging a democratic alliance against Marine Le Pen's far-right national rally in an upcoming snap legislative election. In what amounted to be a campaign speech just days after he upended French politics by calling the election, Macron acknowledged making mistakes, saying people had expressed their indignation but felt they were not being heard. I do not want to give the keys to power to the extreme right in 2027, so I fully accept having triggered a movement to provide clarification, he said, charging the RN policies that would impoverish workers and retirees. Macron called the election in a shock move after the anti-immigration RN trounced his Renaissance Party in European Parliament elections on Sunday. Even if RN wins a majority in the vote, scheduled for June 30th and July 7th, Macron would remain president for 3 more years and still be in charge of defense and foreign policy, but he would lose control over the domestic agenda, including economic policy, security, immigration, and finances. Macron said at his press conference he would not quit if his camp loses, and he would not debate against Le Pen. Instead, he called on many of our compatriots and political leaders who do not recognize themselves in the extremist fever to build a new project, a coalition to govern, a coalition to act in the service of the French and for the Republic. He pledged to take a firmer hand in questions of immigration, security and justice, arguing that a far left prone to anti-Semitism would be too lax. The extreme right solutions would not solve the problems and would only bulldoze France's constitutional rule of law, he said. Wet weather helped bring Britain's economic growth to a halt in April after a strong start to 2024, and the opposition Labour Party jumped on the figures to attack Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's pre-election claims of a turnaround. Gross domestic products was flat in April, as economists polled by Reuters had forecast after a 0.4% month-on-month rise in March, the Office for National Statistics said. The figures followed labour market data on Tuesday that showed falling employment and rising unemployment, but continued strong wage growth. Financial markets showed little reaction to the figures, with investors still judging the prospects of a Bank of England interest rate cut next week as remote. Rachel Reeves, who stands to become finance minister if the opposition Labour Party wins the election, sought to use the data to attack one of Sunak's main said. The Labour Party is on course to win the national election on July 4th, according to opinion polls which give Keir Starmer's party a roughly 20-point lead over the governing Conservatives. After the shallow recession that lasted through the second half of 2023, the economy remains only 0.6% larger than it was a year ago, and 2.2% bigger than his size during the last national election of 2019, a historically poor performance. Paul Dale's chief economist at Capital Economics said the stalling of growth in April did not raise the risk of a return to recession and seemed linked to wet weather, which hurt construction and the retail sector. Overall, despite the stalling of the recovery in April, the dual drags on economic growth from higher interest rates and higher inflation will continue to fade throughout the year, Dale said. British police said they had charged a 28-year-old man with using threatening behaviour after he hurled objects at Nigel Farage, the leader of Britain's Reform Party, during an election campaign event. Pro-Brexit campaigner Farage was travelling through Barnsley in northern England, waving to crowds from an open top bus on Tuesday when a man threw what appeared to be large pieces of broken stone at him but missed. Footage on bill would put South Australia on the curbs of becoming a world leader in ending the nexus between money and political power. We want money out of politics. We know this is not easy. These reforms may well face legal challenge, Malinowska said, but we are determined to deliver them with this bill to be introduced in the Parliament in the near future. In a subtle challenge to his federal and state counterparts, the Premier told Guardian Australia he thought it was something that democracies everywhere should be pursuing. The Albanese government pledged to introduce spending and donation caps and truth in political advertising laws as revealed by Guardian Australia after the 2022 federal election and confirmed by a parliamentary inquiry that reported last July. The Special Minister of State, Don Farrell, said last month an agreement between the major parties and the crossbench had not yet been reached. An amendment bill is still expected by the middle of the year in order to level the playing field for newly created parties and independent candidates. The South Australia bill will allow candidates to receive donations up to $2,700, although they will remain subject to campaign spending caps. Those spending caps have been set at 100. If the bill is passed, a registered political party will be entitled to a one-off payment of $200,000 before 31st August 2026, which is lower out of $700,000 or the number of party members of parliament multiplied by $47,000 will also be given to parties for operational funding. Membership fees will be allowed to